Come get some. Beware,
IGN GameScoop.
Welcome back to GameScoop, everybody. I'm your host, Damon Hatfield. I'm joined now by Scott Lowe.
What's up?
Colin Moriarty.
Hello.
Justin Davis.
Scoop.
And we just gotta talk about November 22nd.
We gotta.
The day the Xbox One is out. I was riding my scooter to work today, and I was just thinking, man, it's almost 2 months until the release of the PS4, and we still don't have a release date for Xbox One. And someone over at Microsoft heard me. They read my thoughts. They were like, oh, we gotta get a release.
They heard and got on the horn.
Yeah, before Damon gets into the office, we gotta get this release date out there now. So what's interesting about it is that it's after the PlayStation 4 in the US for us, but before the PS4 for like the UK and a couple other territories, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, Microsoft doesn't have as big of a stranglehold on the European market as Sony does, so that could potentially be part of the reasoning there.
Yeah, Europe also doesn't have Black Friday.
Yeah,
right.
That's
That's our misery that we have to deal with.
It's also interesting, it is exactly 8 years after the launch of the Xbox 360.
A lot of symbolism there.
November 22nd, 2005.
8 years. It's really
Right?
long time.
That's
Yeah.
a long
It used to just be
time.
a known thing that video game generations were 5 years long-ish.
I like
Yeah.
that it lasted
8
this
years.
long, but
Yeah?
but what I think is interesting is that both companies are utilizing the same strategy on each other in different territories. Like, Sony wants to release PS4 early in the States because they need to fight here. They lost here. And so they want to have supply to be able to compete here. And it was interesting that, Microsoft's basically saying, like, that's fine, we're confident we're going to win here. And we want to do the same thing in Europe. And Sony held their supply to have it in the US and is waiting a few weeks until they release late in November in Europe because they feel the same way in Europe. They're like, we already won, we're winning in Europe. So like, it's kind of funny that they're going into each other's turf and basically fighting there first. And that's what I think is most intriguing about this release date.
It's interesting that Microsoft is going so close to Black Friday. I mean, it's
1 week
only
before.
Yeah, it's a 1 week before. So like, any supply issues that they run into are just going to be highly publicized, like just because.
I mean, I'm assuming that initial supply is going to be allocated to pre-orders and things like that. Like,
That's why I was thinking they need to get out there ahead of time so people can buy games on Black Friday, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was assuming.
Yeah. It's interesting that Sony. I'm not sure what Microsoft's story is right now in terms of their pre-orders. I'm sure they're actually very strong, but Sony keeps saying that in their 20-year history of SCE, that they haven't seen this amount of anticipation, and the pre-order numbers are huge. Or
We know it's over 1 million, right?
Yeah, and it was a million during Gamescom, and so it's probably higher than that now that they released the Shadowfall bundle, which is day one and all that kind of stuff. So it's like 1.1, 1.2 probably. I really think we're looking at a really interesting situation where stores are going to get like 4 units each or something like that. Like where it's going to be like all the units are spoken for except for like, here's a few that you can put on shelves and good luck.
I mean, it almost seems like if you wanted to get a PS4 day one today, like what options do you have? Like where, like I guess there must be chains and things that aren't doing pre-orders so you can line up and stuff. But like if you were to just try to order one at any of the big box retailers, like you can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go wait in line for like those midnight launches, and then even then, like the first few people in line are probably pre-order customers, or the first allocated units are for pre-order customers. So I don't know. Yeah, it raises an excellent
really,
point.
I mean, it's super exciting to have the date. And to Colin's point about the stuff going on in the Europe and the Americas, like this is really interesting stuff to think about and analyze. But the date almost doesn't matter so much because it's like people have pre-ordered. That initial supply is already whichever one comes out of the gate stronger wins. Like.
Well, it matters to the people who have pre-ordered it and they want to know when they can play
Sure.
their games.
I'd also like to point out that the unprecedented pre-orders for Sony and even like Microsoft's big wins, like this flies in the face of like all of over the last couple of years, all that commentary that this is the last era of consoles, and like I really just see it as like kind of an evolution of it. Like these are more than just game-centric devices. I mean, if they're higher than they've ever been, it really doesn't paint a very bleak picture for the.
No, not at all.
I agree. I think a lot of people were reading into, Wii U struggles in particular about like kind of a harbinger of things to come for the console market. And a lot of people were like, well, Nintendo's really, really huge, and the Wii's really huge, and so, it's kind of struggling right now, and this is a sign of things to come for PlayStation and Xbox, and PlayStation 4's pre-orders alone will outsell Wii U in its first month, without having to sell anything on the market. Like games, these things are already spoken for. So I agree. I think that it's a good sign for us that iPhone and iOS gaming hasn't just vanquished console gaming, and people are still excited. And maybe what you were saying is true, that people have just been waiting for these consoles.
so
you know,
long.
and it's been a
8
long
years,
time. Like
yeah.
we're kind of like I'm probably in the minority where I'm like I like that this generation keeps going. Look at that impressive PlayStation 3 catalog, that impressive, you know, Wii catalog, that impressive Xbox 360 catalog. Like, well, I think Wii has great games from 2006 to 2009 or so.
It's true. It's true.
Got that little King story.
That's on Vita as well. No one knows because no one owns a Vita. Yeah, so I think that's really exciting. I think it's buttressing like the industry at a great time when people thought everything was falling apart.
It's still really hard to say though. Like I think when people talked about consoles being so strong and then fading and sort of PC and mobile taking over, like there were years where like if you wanted to play Madden, if you wanted to play GoldenEye, if you wanted to play Halo, like you had to have a console. That stuff wasn't on PC. But we were talking about this morning how Titanfall, like it's winning all these awards. It really seems like the ace up the Xbox One's hole, but I'm like, I'm gonna play that on PC. Like, I feel like if you have a PC,
It's up the hole. I just like.
stay up the hole. Oh no! Obviously meant up the sleeves. Why didn't any of you say
There's a-
anything?
I liked it.
I was laughing. I was like.
Yeah, like I think well, good.
Yeah, but I mean, so I agree with you that, yeah, I mean, maybe the talk of the console death being premature or was a little premature, but I don't know. Like, if you have a high-end gaming PC, do you really need one of these consoles? Like, what's going on in these consoles that you gotta drop the $400 or $500?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
I mean-
oh, sorry.
I think the difference is the convenience factor. I mean, running a PC, it's obviously creating or building your own PC is very difficult. Ordering something from like an Alienware, an iBuyPower, or something like that, like that's a little easier. But even still, like the barrier to entry is a little higher, obviously cost-wise, and then of course like just the knowing how to maximize it, that sort of thing, and what you're looking for. So I think the consistent like theme across all game consoles is just like the convenience factor. So I think that'll really kind of drive it for a lot of people. But also like again, the kind of cost. And I know that like counter argument for like the people saying, well, consoles will die. People are mainly buying these for their entertainment value, and it's like as outside of gaming. I think that's a little like I think that's probably not very accurate because people aren't really going to buy a $500 streaming box when they can easily get something like a Roku or something like that.
I mean, it's really hard to say. I'm
$70,
glad that the pre-order numbers are so strong because the Wii U, like, we didn't know what was going to happen. Like, are they not responding to the Wii U, or is the whole category like that faded at the same time that mobile and social is coming on strong? Like, a lot of people didn't know what to think.
Yeah, we didn't have anything to compare it to. I mean, that's what I was talking about. Like, Wii U is going to do better as games come out. I don't think it's ever going to be what Nintendo wanted it to be or anywhere close to that. But when the games start coming out, I think it's that there were no games. And I think that with these two consoles, there are games. And it's not only the exclusives. Like I think games like Resogun and Killzone look really good for launch of PS4, but there are a lot like Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs and a lot of stuff. I mean, this is good stuff. Like these are when you consider like the PS1 launch with Battle Arena, Toshinden, or PS2's launch with like Smuggler's Run and Fantavision and all this random stuff. Like these are actually good. It started with Vita. Vita had, I think, really the strongest launch lineup, I think, in industry history. No one knew because no one bought a Vita, but that was like an impressive launch lineup.
Like 30 games, right?
Yeah, and they were good, like Stardust and Uncharted and all that kind of stuff. And I think now they're understanding that the HD twins are understanding that they need to have these strong games. But to Justin's point about Titanfall in particular, I think perception is reality with a lot of these. Like you were saying, like Titanfall is going to come to PlayStation 4. Like I'm positive that is eventually going to happen. But like when you own something like this and you own the perception that it is an Xbox One game, like you were saying with PC, it doesn't matter. Like that's going to turn the tide for Xbox One. That's why I think PS4 will do really well and probably beat Xbox One initially until a game like that comes out and you own it. And even though like later on like Mass Effect or something like that, like will come, but it's not going to matter by that point.
Justin, you have some stats on previous console launches.
Yeah, I pulled these this morning because Brian Altano and I are working on, a thing about the history of console launches, and it's just sort of interesting. Like, these are things that people know, but until you, like, see it in front of you, like, you sort of maybe don't connect the dots. That, including this gen, for the last 3 generations in a row, one console has launched a year before the other two. So the PS2 launched a year before GameCube and Xbox, and the Xbox 360 launched before the PlayStation and Wii. And now the Wii U launched before these two consoles. And so, like, it worked for Sony and it worked for Microsoft. Doesn't seem to be working out for Nintendo. So that's why, like, I'm such a nerd about these dates that, like, I really want to talk about November 22nd and what it means. Ultimately, I don't know that it really means too much. Like, the consoles are going to launch. It's really the games that matter. It's the price that matters. It's sort of the strategic decisions they make over the next 18 months are what really is going to determine not which one came out 7 days before the other.
Yeah, I don't think people are saying, I don't know which console to get. Well, which one comes out first?
There's
This
all
one
kinds
comes
of-
out a week before the other one.
Like looking at these stats, the Genesis launched 2 years before the Super Nintendo. Like
89 to 91, right?
That sounds
yeah,
crazy.
the Genesis came out in
well,
1989.
so like, that was a case of necessity, right? Because the Master System wasn't doing
Yeah.
anything.
Well, it
That's
was like Genesis wasn't really on the map too until Sonic was bundled in with it and
Yeah.
released later.
For sure, that's a good point. That's sort of the equivalent of like the Genesis existed for a while without Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, and the NES existed without Super Mario. Like it was like
that was-
not
the
the
NES,
arcade
yeah,
game, and
yeah.
not the not the one we know and love, the platformer. Yeah, I think like I'm of two minds with this. Like I think about the Xbox and GameCube launch, which was very similar to this
Yeah.
in 2001, where they came out like very close
They're
to each other.
3 days apart.
Yeah. And these two consoles were aiming at completely different audiences, right? So like there was like there was kind of like method to the madness there. I think with these two consoles, they're kind of aiming at the same people, and they want the same group of consumers, the hardcore gamer that spends lots of money on games. And I think that's I kind of feel like for some people, it's gonna be like what you find first, and like because both of the consoles are gonna be very scarce. And I also think that a lot of loyalty right now because of PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. I think you're going to go where you're comfortable.
I think it's not necessarily the exact same audience. I think Sony's gone real hard for the hardcore audience, but Xbox is obviously making a much larger entertainment play, and I think they'll actually pick up some steam as a result of that. Not only because of what the Xbox One offers, but more importantly, what people have come to know about the Xbox 360. Like, so many people have adopted the Xbox 360 just because of its entertainment value, like as a cord-cutting solution.
Sure.
So I think they'll probably get some momentum out of that.
That's actually, Colin, you bring up an interesting point that I hadn't considered, which is that you're right that these two consoles are going after the exact same audience and are coming out a week apart. Like when you look at the history of consoles, you're at Xbox and GameCube were 3 days apart, but they were very different consoles. The Wii and PS3 were 2 days apart, but like they're very different consoles. The PS3 was $500. The Wii was half the price. It was $250. So even though it's like, oh, consoles have come out really close together, like they were very, very different, right? So it's like the Wii launch and the PS3 launch. Like I'm sure there's a lot of people that own both. I own both. But there's also, I don't know, like this might be the first time that two consoles really gunning directly for one another in a direct, like one-to-one way have come out so close together.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think about it too in the sense that like Scott's right, like that Xbox is making more of like they're deviating in that like PlayStation's like all in with the gamers, which I think is absolutely the smart move to make, and it's why they're winning in the pre-release environment. But yeah, like it's a situation where I think these consoles might be splitting the difference with each other, and it's I think it almost adds more fuel to the fire that like maybe console gaming is more healthy than we think because. If you can only afford one, these are expensive boxes. They're $400 and $500. So $900 to buy both, $1,000 to buy both with tax and shipping or whatever. Like,
It's not even games, like, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm wondering if this is a sign that console gaming is just actually healthier since they're coming out right on top of each other. You really can only afford one, and there are already millions of people interested in buying them. Like it's a good sign. It makes you so. It fascinates me when you just think about how things have changed so rapidly since Wii U launched. Like I said, and everyone was like, "This is over. Like this is bad news," And now it's like now everything looks good again. So it's
I mean, we still know like there might just be 2 million people that are super hardcore gamers, really just want new hardware, and then in January, February, March, like these consoles could fall off the map. Like it's really hard to say. Like I am not willing to make predictions at this point because I can't even. I don't know. Like, I'm surprised at how strong they're doing, so it's like I don't want to say whether they're going to do well or not well.
Yeah, and the other thing is not to, like, underestimate the value of the change in architecture. I mean, Sony's been trumping it up a lot, and, like, it's almost gotten to, like, a fever pitch at this point, though how they're, like, dev-friendly the PS4 is. But the Xbox One is as well. I mean, part of the biggest barriers for console gaming in the past has been that it's been so very proprietary and specific to platforms and therefore expensive for developers. Now they're more or less working on the same architecture across PC, Xbox One, and PS4. So like that is also kind of helping the health of like modern day game developers.
That's absolutely a great point. It's like as we see, big high-end AAA games like Assassin's Creed and Titanfall hit PC, but you can also play, weird if you want to play Hotline Miami or weirder indie stuff, like that's also where PC is. So it's like that's kind of where for a few years you needed to be as a PC gamer, but as consoles sort of get this better breadth and range of titles. They tried it with Xbox Live indie games and some of that sort of stuff. It sort of worked so-so. But now the next-gen consoles really seem to be embracing this breadth of like you can have smaller, more intimate experiences or big AAA experiences.
Yeah, and then like on the mobile front, not to get too technical, but like the chips on that side are starting to become more and more sophisticated, more aligned with PC.
Sure,
like
for sure.
Nvidia's latest, or their next generation of Tegra is going to share a similar architecture with its like desktop GPUs. Like they're all sort of kind of converging on the same kind of point across all of the different platforms.
Makes it easier for software makers.
Yeah.
Very exciting stuff. So the next gen consoles are just a little over 2 months away now. Obviously, we'll have lots more to come on both next gen consoles. Stay tuned to IGN GameScoop.
Has there ever been a band?
It's awesome.
Has there ever been a band that like popped bigger than Hootie and the Blowfish, then faded faster? Like I know there's plenty of one hit. No, but like you said,
forget.
Hootie and the Blowfish had one of the best-selling albums ever.
Yeah, and that follow-up, Fairweather Johnson, only sold like 5-6 mil.
I think it's because the guy got skinny.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Darius
I'm rolling.
Rucker.
So
All right,
when
rolling.
you guys are ready, take it
Let's talk about Darius Rucker.
Start with Darius Rucker.
Yeah.
He performed on the Bachelorette, I think, the last season. Like on one of their dates, it was like, and now entertainment from Darius Rucker. So that's where he is.
I was getting them mixed up with Blues Traveler. That guy got skinny.
Anyway,